The rain hammered against my windshield like 1,000 tiny fists, each drop another reminder of how thoroughly I'd screwed up my life. 5 months since I'd fled Chicago, with nothing but a duffel bag and terror coursing through my veins. 5 months of looking over my shoulder, of flinching at shadows, of building a new life from scraps in this nowhere town where nobody knew my name. I gripped the steering wheel tighter as lightning split the sky, illuminating the deserted parking lot of Mercy General Hospital. The night shift, my shift, was about to begin, and I was already 10 minutes late. My ancient Honda protested as I pulled into a spot far from the staff entrance, the engine wheezing before falling silent. For a moment, I just sat there, listening to the rain and trying to calm my racing heart. "You're safe here, Eliza. He can't find you. Nobody can." The words had become my mantra, repeated in the darkness of sleepless nights and whispered in moments of panic. But they felt hollow now, echoing in the confines of my car as thunder rumbled overhead. I grabbed my bag and made a dash for the entrance, cold rain soaking through my scrubs within seconds. The automatic doors slid open, welcoming me into the fluorescent-lit lobby that smelled of antiseptic and bad coffee. Night shifts in the ER were a special kind of hell, but they paid better, and the chaos kept my mind from wandering to dangerous places, to him. "Nice of you to join us, Walker." Nurse Martinez didn't look up from her computer as I hurried past the reception desk, water dripping from my hair onto the polished floor. "We've got 3 in triage and a drunk tank special in curtain 4. "Sorry, car trouble," I lied, shrugging off my soaked jacket and stuffing it into my locker in the break room. I didn't have car trouble. I had spent 20 minutes sitting in my apartment parking lot, trying to convince myself that the black sedan I'd spotted earlier was just coincidence, not one of his men. I pulled my wet hair into a tight ponytail and took a deep breath. For the next 12 hours, I wasn't Eliza Reyes, the woman who'd fled from one of Chicago's most dangerous men. I was just Nurse Walker, ER night shift, small-town hospital, dealing with everything from farm accidents to frat boy stupidity. The night unfolded like most others, a steady stream of minor emergencies punctuated by moments of genuine crisis. By 3 a.m., I'd assisted with setting a compound fracture, treated 2 cases of alcohol poisoning, and helped stitch up a nasty dog bite. The familiar rhythm of controlled chaos was soothing, a reminder that I could still be useful, still be something other than afraid. "Walker, incoming," Dr. Chen called out, snapping me from my momentary daze. "Car accident on Route 16. 2 patients, 1 critical. ETA 3 minutes. The ambulance arrived in a blur of flashing lights and urgent voices. I fell into step with the trauma team, helping transfer the first victim, a middle-aged woman with a nasty head wound, onto a gurney. "BP dropping, possible internal bleeding," the paramedic reported as we wheeled her inside. For the next hour, I existed entirely in the present, hands steady as I assisted Dr. Chen, anticipating needs before they were voiced, finding calm in the eye of the storm. This was why I'd become a nurse. These moments when nothing mattered except saving the life in front of me. The woman stabilized, and as they prepared to take her to surgery, I peeled off my blood-stained gloves and headed to check on the second victim from the accident. "Room 3, Martinez directed me. Young female, pregnant, mostly cuts and bruises, but we're monitoring for signs of placental abruption. My heart sank as I pushed open the door. Pregnant women in accidents always hit me hard, triggering memories I'd tried so desperately to bury. The girl on the bed couldn't have been more than 20, her face pale against the stark white pillow, a nasty gash across her forehead already stitched and bandaged. "Hi there," I said softly, checking her chart. "I'm Nurse Walker. How are you feeling, Rebecca?" Her eyes fluttered open, glazed with pain and fear. "The baby," she whispered. "Is my baby okay?" I checked the monitors. "Heartbeat is strong, which is a good sign." "Doctor, Patel ordered an ultrasound to be safe, and they'll be coming to take you up soon." I adjusted her IV. "Is there someone we can call for you?" Tears welled in her eyes. "My phone, it broke in the crash. My husband's number, I don't have it memorized." Her hand clutched at my scrubs. "Please, I need him here. We'll figure it out," I promised, gently detaching her fingers. "Try to rest. I'll be back to check on you soon." As I left the room, a chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with my still damp clothes. 5 months ago, I'd been the one in a hospital bed, terrified and alone, with no one to call, except I had called someone, the very person I was now running from. The memory surged up, unwelcome and vivid, the sleek black phone being pressed into my trembling hand, the number I'd sworn never to use again dialed with shaking fingers, his voice answering after a single ring, dark and dangerous as the night around me. "Where are you?" Just 2 words, but they'd contained both salvation and damnation. I shook my head, banishing the memory. That was then. This was now. I was different, stronger, free. The rest of my shift blurred into a haze of routine tasks. By the time 7 a.m. rolled around, the storm had passed, leaving behind a washed-out sky the color of an old bruise. I was exhausted, my body running on autopilot as I finished my charts and prepared to hand over to the day shift. "Walker," Martinez called out as I was signing out. "Got a minute?" I followed her to the break room, where she poured 2 cups of coffee that looked strong enough to strip paint. "You okay?" she asked, sliding one toward me. "You seemed rattled during that trauma last night." "I'm fine," I lied, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. "Just tired." Martinez had been kind to me since I'd started at Mercy 3 months ago, never asking too many questions about where I'd come from or why I'd shown up in the middle of nowhere with impeccable credentials and shadows in my eyes. But kindness made me nervous now. It created connections, and connections were dangerous. "If you say so." She didn't push, and I was grateful. "Hey, before you go, can you check on the pregnant girl from the accident? Rebecca Miller. Day shift is swamped with a bus crash that just came in." I nodded, swallowing the last of the bitter coffee and heading back to room 3. Rebecca was awake, staring out the window at the gray morning light. "How are you feeling?" I asked, checking her vitals. "Better." Her hand rested protectively on her slightly swollen belly. "They did the ultrasound. Baby's fine." The relief in her voice made my chest ache. "That's wonderful," I said, forcing a smile. "Were they able to reach your husband?" "Yes." Her face brightened. "He's on his way." She hesitated, then asked, "Do you have kids?" The question was like a knife between my ribs. "No," I said shortly, busying myself with her chart so she wouldn't see my expression. "Oh, well, this is our first." She didn't notice my discomfort, lost in her own joy. "We've been trying for so long. This baby is our miracle." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I knew about miracles, and how quickly they could be snatched away. "All right. You're all set," I said, my professional mask firmly back in place. "The day nurse will be in to check on you soon. Take care of yourself, Rebecca." Outside, the parking lot glistened with puddles, the world washed clean by the night's storm. I trudged to my car, bone-tired and hollow. The Honda started on the 3rd try, a small Mercy. I drove home on autopilot, through streets beginning to stir with morning life. My apartment building was quiet, most of its residents already gone for the day. I climbed the 3 flights of stairs, too impatient to wait for the perpetually broken elevator, and fumbled with my keys at the door. Inside, I went through my post-shift routine, check the locks twice, draw the blinds, sweep for any signs that someone had been there. Paranoid, maybe, but paranoia had kept me alive these past months. Satisfied that my tiny sanctuary remained secure, I peeled off my scrubs and stepped into the shower, turning the water as hot as I could stand it. Only then, with steam rising around me and water masking any sound, did I allow myself to cry for Rebecca and her miracle baby, for the life I'd fled, for my own lost miracle. Afterward, wrapped in a threadbare towel, I caught sight of myself in the foggy bathroom mirror. Dark circles shadowed my eyes, and I'd lost weight I couldn't afford to lose. My collarbones too prominent, my cheeks hollowed. I barely recognized myself anymore. I'd been beautiful once, at least he had thought so. Beautiful enough to catch the eye of Adriano Rossi, to make him want to possess me, to make him believe I was something precious to be locked away in his gilded cage. "Mine," he'd whisper against my skin, his voice a caress and a threat all at once. "Only mine, Eliza." I shuddered at the memory, at how those words had once made me feel both terrified and desired, at how I'd mistaken obsession for love until it was almost too late. Sleep came in fits and starts, haunted by dreams where I was running down endless corridors, his footsteps always just behind me. I woke in the late afternoon, groggy and disoriented, the apartment bathed in amber light. My phone, a cheap burner, replaced every few weeks, buzzed with a text from Martinez. "Miller girl asking for you. Says she wants to thank the nurse who was so kind to her last night. You up for a quick visit before your shift?" I stared at the message, torn. Hospital policy discouraged personal connections with patients, but I found myself wanting to know that Rebecca was truly okay, that her miracle remained intact. "We'll stop by," I texted back, already regretting the decision. The hospital was quieter when I arrived an hour early for my shift. The day's emergencies handled, the corridors less frantic. I found Rebecca's room easily, knocking softly before entering. She looked better, color returned to her cheeks. Her husband, a tall man with kind eyes, holding her hand at the bedside. "Nurse Walker," she exclaimed. "I was hoping you'd come. Just for a minute," I said, awkwardly hovering by the door. "I wanted to see how you were doing. So much better." She beamed, then winced as the motion pulled at her stitches. "They're keeping me overnight for observation, but we should be able to go home tomorrow." "That's great news. I wanted to thank you," she continued, "for being so calm last night when I was freaking out, for taking care of me and my baby." "Just doing my job," I mumbled, uncomfortable with gratitude I didn't deserve. "Well, we appreciate it," her husband said, his arm protectively around her shoulders. "Both of us do." I nodded, backing toward the door. "I should get to my shift. Take care, Rebecca." "Wait," she called. "We don't even know your first name." I hesitated, then said, "Eliza. My name is Eliza." It was a mistake. I knew it as soon as the name left my lips. I'd been careful to use only my last name at work, to keep that last shred of my true self hidden away. But something about Rebecca's genuine warmth had cracked my defenses. "Eliza," she repeated, smiling. "Thank you, Eliza." I fled the room, heart pounding. One slip, one moment of weakness, that was all it ever took. My shift passed in a fog of anxiety, each new ambulance arrival making me tense, each unknown face triggering a jolt of fear. By midnight, I was jumping at shadows, convinced that somehow my moment of carelessness had rippled outward, creating waves that would lead him straight to me. "Walker, you're a mess tonight," Martinez observed as I fumbled with a blood pressure cuff. "Go take 5. Get some air." I nodded gratefully and escaped to the ambulance bay, gulping in the cool night air. The sky had cleared, stars visible above the harsh parking lot lights, a reminder of how vast the world was, how small I was within it, surely too small to be found if I didn't want to be. But I knew better. Adriano's reach was long, his resources vast, his determination relentless. If he wanted to find me, and I knew he did, it was only a matter of time. My phone buzzed in my pocket, startling me. Unknown number. My heart lurched painfully against my ribs as I stared at the screen. 5 months of silence, of careful hiding, of looking over my shoulder. 5 months since I'd fled from him, from the life he'd crafted for me, from the beautiful prison of his protection. 5 months since I'd lost everything that mattered. I let the call go to voicemail, hands shaking too badly to even decline it. A minute later, the notification appeared. One new voicemail. I pressed the phone to my ear, breath caught in my throat. "Ms. Walker, this is Principal Davis from Riverview Elementary. We have you listed as an emergency contact for Sofia Martinez. There's been an incident at the school, and we've been unable to reach her mother. Please call us back at your earliest convenience." The phone slipped from my nerveless fingers, clattering to the ground. Sofia Martinez, Nurse Martinez's 8-year-old daughter. The emergency contact form I'd signed when I'd agreed to babysit her one weekend, a moment of normalcy I'd allowed myself, a dangerous connection I'd made despite knowing better. Not him, not Adriano, just a simple mix-up, a school calling the wrong number. Relief made my knees weak, and I sagged against the wall, laughing and crying all at once. I was still safe, still hidden, still free. But as I bent to retrieve my phone, a sleek black sedan pulled slowly into the hospital parking lot, its windows tinted too dark to see inside. its engine a low, predatory purr that I would recognize anywhere. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that my 5 months of freedom had just run out. I froze, watching the black sedan glide to a stop near the hospital entrance. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my body refused to move, rooted to the spot like prey in the headlights of an oncoming car. The driver's door opened, and a tall figure emerged, not Adriano, but Marco, his most trusted lieutenant. My stomach twisted with a sickening combination of fear and relief. Marco's eyes scanned the ambulance bay, sweeping over me once before returning, recognition dawning on his face. 5 months had changed me. I was thinner, my once long hair cut short, my appearance deliberately plain, but not enough. "Eliza," he said, voice carrying in the quiet night air. Not a question, a confirmation. I backed away, finally breaking free of my paralysis. "How did you find me?" A faint smile touched his lips, humorless and cold. "You know better than to ask that." Of course I did. Adriano had eyes everywhere, connections that reached into places I couldn't even imagine. One moment of carelessness, one trace left behind, that's all it would have taken. "He's not here," Marco continued, glancing back at the car. "But he wants to see you." "No." The word came out as a whisper, then stronger. "No, I'm not going back." Marco sighed, looking almost sympathetic. "It's not a request, Eliza. I'm in the middle of my shift. I can't just call in sick, family emergency. Whatever you need to say." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Don't make this difficult. You know how it ends." I did know. 5 months ago, I'd seen firsthand what happened to people who defied Adriano Rossi. The memory of blood on marble floors, of screams cut suddenly short, flashed through my mind. "Fine," I said, the fight draining out of me. "Let me tell them I'm leaving, and I need to get my things from inside." Marco nodded, watching me carefully. 10 minutes. Then we go. I walked back into the ER on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else, mind racing. I could run. But where? How far would I get before Adriano's men caught up with me again? I could call the police. But what would I tell them? That my ex-lover, a man I had no proof was connected to organized crime, had sent his driver to pick me up. They'd laugh me out of the station. Martinez looked up from her charts as I approached the nurse's station. "Feel better? You look like you've seen a ghost. I need to leave," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Family emergency." She frowned. "Everything okay?" "No," I answered truthfully. "But I need to handle it. Can you cover for me?" "Of course." Concern creased her forehead. "Do you need anything? A ride somewhere?" I shook my head, throat tight with unshed tears. Martinez had been kind to me, kinder than I deserved. "I'm sorry," was all I could say before heading to the break room to collect my bag. In the bathroom, I stared at my reflection, trying to gather whatever scraps of courage I had left. The woman looking back at me was a stranger, hollow-eyed and afraid, nothing like the confident nurse who saved lives, nor the woman Adriano had once claimed to love. "You can do this," I told myself. "You've survived worse." But had I? The memory of my last night in Chicago rose unbidden, the positive pregnancy test hidden in my pocket, the whispered conversation I'd overheard between Adriano and Marco about the problem that needed to be taken care of, the sickening realization that the problem was the man who'd learned too much about Adriano's business, the man now scheduled for execution. I'd fled that night, terrified not just for myself, but for the tiny life growing inside me, a life that had ended in a sterile emergency room 3 weeks later. Blood and pain and grief beyond anything I'd known before. Adriano didn't know about the baby, didn't know about the loss. Whatever he wanted from me now had nothing to do with that, at least. Marco was waiting precisely where I'd left him, checking his watch as I approached. "Cutting it close," he remarked, opening the car door for me. The interior of the sedan smelled of leather and Adriano's distinctive cologne, a scent that transported me instantly back to Chicago, to his penthouse overlooking the lake, to the life I'd left behind. I slid into the back seat, Marco joining me rather than taking the driver's position. "Anton," he said to the man behind the wheel, "take us to the house." "What house?" I demanded, panic flaring. Where are we going? Not far, Marco assured me, his tone almost gentle. You'll see him soon. The drive passed in tense silence, the city giving way to countryside, darkness broken only by our headlights and the occasional farmhouse in the distance. After about 20 minutes, we turned onto a private road, winding through dense trees before emerging in front of a sprawling lakefront property, lights glowing warmly from within. My heart hammered against my ribs. He's here? In Wisconsin? Marco's expression gave nothing away. He has properties everywhere, Eliza. You know that. The car stopped at the front entrance, a grand doorway flanked by stone columns. Before Marco could open his door, mine was pulled open from the outside, revealing another of Adriano's security men. Paolo, I thought his name was, though I'd never spoken to him directly. Ms. Reyes, he said with a respectful nod. He's waiting for you inside. I stepped out on shaking legs, Marco close behind me. The house was beautiful, of course. Adriano accepted nothing less than perfection in his surroundings. Modern architecture blended with natural elements, glass and stone creating a seamless transition between inside and out, the lake visible beyond floor-to-ceiling windows. This way, Marco directed, leading me through an expansive foyer and down a hallway lined with subtle but undoubtedly valuable artwork. We stopped at a set of double doors. Marco knocked once, then opened them without waiting for a response. The room beyond was a study, walls lined with bookshelves, a massive desk positioned to face the view of the lake, and behind it, rising slowly to his feet, was Adriano Rossi. 5 months had changed him too, though in less obvious ways. His dark hair was the same, swept back from his forehead in immaculate waves. His body, beneath the perfectly tailored suit, was still lean and powerful. But there was something different in his eyes, something harder, colder. Eliza, he said, my name in his mouth a blend of accusation and caress. At last. Marco withdrew silently, closing the doors behind him, leaving us alone. Why am I here, Adriano? I asked, proud that my voice didn't shake. He moved around the desk, approaching with the fluid grace of a predator. You disappeared, he said, stopping a few feet away. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. His accent, usually so controlled, thickened with emotion. 5 months, Eliza. Do you have any idea what that was like for me? I had to leave, I said, taking an involuntary step back. Why? The single word contained multitudes: anger, confusion, hurt. I swallowed hard. I heard you and Marco talking that night, about Thomas, about how you were going to handle him. A flicker of surprise crossed his face, quickly masked. And you assumed the worst of me. Was I wrong? I challenged, finding a fragment of courage. Was Thomas not executed the next day? Adriano's expression hardened. Thomas was an FBI informant who had infiltrated my organization. He was feeding information to the authorities that would have destroyed everything I've built, put my people in prison, including you, by association. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. What? He was gathering evidence against everyone close to me. Had his operation continued, you would have been implicated as well. Adriano stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. I was protecting you, Eliza, as I have always protected what's mine. What's mine? The possessive phrase that had once made me feel both secure and suffocated. I'm not yours, I whispered, though the words lacked conviction even to my own ears. Not anymore. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Then why did you put me as your emergency contact at the hospital? My breath caught. What? The hospital called me tonight. She said you're her emergency contact. He quoted the words from the premise with dark amusement. Imagine my surprise. Confusion swept through me. That's impossible. I never... And then understanding dawned, cold and clear. When I'd first been hired at Mercy, filling out endless forms in HR, there had been an emergency contact sheet. I'd left it blank, having no one to list. The HR director had frowned, saying they needed someone, in a moment of weakness, of loneliness. I'd written Adriano's name and number, knowing I would never actually call it, but needing that tenuous connection, that reminder of a time when I'd belonged somewhere, to someone. It was an accident, I said weakly. I never meant an accident. He was close now, too close, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from my face. I flinched, and his hand froze mid-motion, pain flickering across his features. You're afraid of me. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Yes. He dropped his hand, stepping back. I have never hurt you, Eliza, never raised a hand to you, never threatened you. You kept me prisoner, I countered. I kept you safe. By locking me away, by controlling my every move. Adriano's jaw tightened. The world I live in is dangerous. The precautions were necessary. My voice cracked. I couldn't breathe, Adriano. I couldn't live like that anymore. For a long moment, he simply looked at me, his expression unreadable. Then, quietly, and now? How are you living now, Eliza? Working night shifts in a small-town hospital, alone, looking over your shoulder constantly, jumping at shadows? The accuracy of his assessment stung. At least I'm free. Are you? He gestured toward the windows, the darkness beyond. Or have you simply exchanged one prison for another of your own making? I had no answer for that, no defense against the truth in his words. Silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken words and memories. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the warmth of the room. Why did you bring me here, Adriano? I finally asked. To lecture me? To punish me for leaving? Or just to show me that you could find me whenever you wanted? He sighed, moving to a cabinet against the wall. Would you like a drink? No. He poured himself a glass of amber liquid anyway, the crystal decanter catching the light. I brought you here because I needed to see you, he said, his back to me, to understand why you left. I already told you. You told me part of the truth. He turned, fixing me with that penetrating gaze that had always seen too much. There's more. I can feel it. My hand instinctively moved to my abdomen, then dropped away. Some truths were too painful to share, even now. Nothing else matters, I said. I had to get away, and I did. And now... I gestured helplessly. Now what? Are you going to force me to go back to Chicago with you? Lock me up again? Anger flashed across his features. Is that what you think of me? That I would drag you back against your will? Wouldn't you? I challenged. Isn't that why Marco brought me here tonight? Isn't that what all this is about, showing me I can't escape you? Adriano set his untouched drink down with deliberate care. No, Eliza, that's not why you're here. He moved toward his desk, opening a drawer and removing a manila folder. You're here because of this. He slid the folder across the desk toward me. I approached cautiously, as if it might contain something dangerous. Inside were photographs, surveillance images showing a man watching my apartment building, another of the same man following me to the hospital, a third of him speaking with someone in a car outside the grocery store I frequented. Who is he? I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. Vincent Caldera. Adriano's voice was flat. Right hand to Emilio Dante. The name meant nothing to me, but the grim set of Adriano's mouth told me enough. Another businessman? A humorless smile touched his lips. You could say that. Dante and I have competing interests, and this man is following me because you are mine. The possessive pronoun hung in the air between us, and Dante knows that hurting you would hurt me. I stared at the photos, nausea rising in my throat. So I'm still in danger, even after leaving you. Even after everything. Yes. Simple, brutal honesty. My world doesn't let go so easily, Eliza. Of either of us. I sank into one of the chairs facing his desk, suddenly exhausted. How long have you known where I was? 3 months? 2 weeks? 4 days? No hesitation, no calculation. He'd been counting. The precision of his answer stunned me. And you just... what? Had me watched? Kept tabs on me from a distance? Yes. Why not contact me? Why wait until now? Adriano joined me, taking the seat beside mine rather than retreating behind his desk. The unexpected proximity made my pulse quicken. Because you needed to be free, he said quietly. You needed to make your own choice. But now Now Dante's men have found you too. His eyes held mine, grave and intense. And unlike me, they won't watch from a distance, won't respect your choices. Fear, cold and familiar, slithered down my spine. What do they want from me? Information about my operations. Leverage against me. His hand moved toward mine, then retreated. Or simply to hurt you because they know it would destroy me. The raw honesty in his voice caught me off guard. In the year I'd spent with Adriano, he'd rarely been so vulnerable, so unguarded. Always the powerful Mafia boss, always in control. This glimpse beneath the armor was disorienting. So what now? I asked, my voice small in the spacious room. Now you have a decision to make. He stood, moving to the window, silhouetted against the darkness outside. You can come back with me to Chicago, where I can protect you properly. Or... He turned, his expression unreadable in the half-light. Or I can arrange for you to disappear completely. New identity, new location. Somewhere not even I could find you. The offer stunned me into silence. He was giving me a choice, a real choice, including the option to vanish even from him. Why would you do that? I finally managed. Let me go completely? Something like pain crossed his features. Because your freedom matters to me, Eliza. Because, he hesitated, then continued more softly, because I love you enough to lose you, if that's what you truly want. The words hit me like a physical blow. In all our time together, through all the possessive gestures and controlling behavior, he had never said those 3 words. Never made himself that vulnerable. You don't even know me anymore, I whispered. He smiled, sad and knowing. I know you still sleep with the light on because darkness frightens you. I know you've lost weight you couldn't afford to lose. I know you're an exceptional nurse who connects with patients despite trying to keep everyone at arm's length. Each accurate observation made me flinch. You've been watching me that closely? I've been making sure you're safe, he corrected. And yes, learning about the life you've built without me. It's barely a life, I admitted, the confession slipping out before I could stop it. I exist. I work. I survive. That's all. It doesn't have to be. I stood abruptly, needing distance from him, from the dangerous temptation he represented. I can't go back to Chicago with you, Adriano. I can't go back to being kept like a pet, a possession. He flinched at my words. Is that how you felt? Yes. No. I ran a hand through my short hair, frustrated. I don't know. Everything was so complicated between us. It still is. He approached slowly, cautiously, like I was a wild animal that might bolt. But it could be different this time. We could be different. How? I demanded. You're still who you are. Your world is still what it is. True, he conceded, but I've learned things too these past 5 months. About what matters. About what I'm willing to change. I wanted to believe him. God help me. I wanted to believe that we could find some middle ground, some way to be together that wouldn't suffocate me. But the memory of those final days in Chicago was too vivid. The increasing restrictions, the bodyguards who never left my side, the growing sense that I was disappearing inside the fortress he'd built around me. I need time, I said finally, to think, to decide. Adriano nodded, though tension remained in the set of his shoulders. Of course, but not here, not alone. Dante's men, I know. The threat was too real to ignore, especially with the evidence in those photographs. Where then? I have a house on the lake, about an hour from here, private, secure. You would have your own space, your own rooms. No pressure, no expectations. He met my eyes directly. Just safety while you consider your options. It was the most reasonable option in an impossible situation. I nodded slowly. Okay, but I need to go back to my apartment first, get some things. Too dangerous, he said immediately. We can purchase whatever you need. I bristled at the familiar, controlling response. Adriano. Something in my tone made him pause, reassess. I apologize, he said, surprising me again. Old habits. What if I send Marco to your apartment? You can make a list of what you need. Personal items we can't simply replace. The compromise was unexpected, another sign that perhaps he truly had changed, or was at least trying to. All right, I agreed, and I need to call the hospital. Let them know I won't be coming in for a few days. Of course. The easy acquiescence felt strange, unsettling after the controlling dynamic I'd grown accustomed to. I studied him, trying to reconcile this more reasonable man with the Adriano I'd fled from. What? He asked, catching my scrutiny. You're different, I said simply. Pain flashed across his features before he could mask it. Losing you changed me, Eliza. Not entirely. I am still who I am, still do what I must in my business. But in this, he gestured between us, in how I treat what matters most to me. Yes, I've changed. Before I could respond, a soft knock came at the door. Marco entered without waiting for permission, his expression grave. Sir, we have movement on the perimeter. Northeast corner. Adriano's demeanor shifted instantly, the momentary vulnerability replaced by cold authority. How many? 3 that we can see. Likely more. Dante's men? I asked, fear spiking through me. Adriano's expression confirmed my suspicion. Get the cars ready, he instructed Marco. We're leaving. Now. Marco nodded and withdrew, already speaking rapid instructions into his comm device. Time to go, Adriano said, moving to a painting on the wall and swinging it aside to reveal a safe. He entered a combination and removed a handgun, checking it with practiced efficiency. Adriano? I said, my voice tight with fear. He glanced up, his expression softening slightly. It's a precaution, nothing more. We'll be fine. But I could read the tension in his body, the alert wariness in his eyes. This was more than a precaution. This was danger, immediate and real, following me even after I'd tried so hard to escape it. I'm sorry, I whispered, the guilt overwhelming. This is because of me, because I ran. He crossed to me in 2 quick strides, his free hand cupping my cheek with surprising gentleness. No. This is because of who I am, the enemies I've made. Never think this is your fault. The warmth of his palm against my skin sent a shiver through me, part fear, part something else I wasn't ready to name. For a moment we stood there, suspended in a bubble of fragile connection amid the mounting crisis around us. Then Marco reappeared at the door. Cars are ready. We need to move. Adriano's hand dropped away. Stay close to me, he said. All business now. No matter what happens, stay close. I nodded, unable to form words past the knot of terror in my throat. Whatever freedom I'd thought I'd found these past 5 months had been an illusion. The world Adriano inhabited, the world I'd been pulled into by loving him, had never truly let me go. As we moved toward the door, his hand came to rest at the small of my back, the familiar protective gesture both comforting and confining. Once more, I was caught in Adriano Rossi's orbit, and the gravity was too strong to escape. We moved through the house with urgent efficiency, Adriano's hand guiding me while his eyes constantly scanned our surroundings. Marco led the way, another security man, Anton, I remembered, bringing up the rear. The quiet luxury of the house had transformed into a tense battleground, shadows suddenly menacing. Down these stairs, Marco directed, opening a door to reveal a descending staircase. The tunnel leads directly to the boathouse. Tunnel? I whispered to Adriano. His mouth tightened. I don't build homes without exit strategies, Eliza. Of course he didn't. In his world, danger was always one step behind, enemies constantly circling. It was the reality I'd tried to escape, only to find myself plunged back into it more deeply than before. The tunnel was surprisingly well lit and finished, not the rough concrete passageway I'd expected, but a fully developed corridor with smooth walls and recessed lighting. We moved quickly, the silence broken only by our footsteps and my rapid breathing. Almost there, Adriano murmured, his thumb rubbing small circles at the small of my back. Whether the gesture was meant to comfort me or himself, I couldn't tell. The tunnel ended at a steel door with an electronic keypad. Marco punched in a code, and the door swung open to reveal an expansive boathouse. 2 sleek speedboats were docked inside, engines already humming softly in preparation. Take the second boat, Adriano instructed Marco. Create a diversion heading south. We'll go north to the safe house. Marco nodded, gesturing to Anton to join him. Be careful, boss. Always am. Adriano guided me toward the first boat, helping me step from the dock. "Stay low," he said, pressing me gently into a seat before taking position at the controls. The boat eased out of the boathouse, barely a ripple marking our passage as we emerged onto the dark lake. Behind us, Marco's boat roared to life, speeding south with deliberate noise and wake, lights blazing. Our vessel, by contrast, moved nearly silently, running dark across the smooth water. I huddled in my seat, the night air cold against my skin, adrenaline making me hyper-aware of every sound, every movement. Adriano's profile was sharp against the faint starlight, his attention divided between navigating and scanning the shoreline for threats. "How far?" I asked, my voice barely audible above the soft purr of the engine. 20 minutes, he replied, not looking at me. "The property is secluded, accessible only by water or helicopter. We'll be safe there." Safe. The word had lost all meaning. 5 months of looking over my shoulder, of jumping at shadows, and I'd never truly been safe at all. Not from Adriano, who'd known where I was almost the entire time, and not from his enemies, who had apparently found me too. What if they follow us? The question escaped before I could stop it, fear making my voice shake. Now Adriano did glance at me, his expression softening briefly. They won't. Marco is very good at his job, and this boat is special. Special how? A hint of pride touched his voice. Radar-absorbing materials in the hull, electric hybrid engine, thermal masking. To any surveillance, we're practically invisible. Of course, Adriano would have a stealth boat. The absurdity of it almost made me laugh, though the sound that escaped was closer to a sob. His hand left the controls briefly to squeeze mine. "I know this is overwhelming, but I promise you, Eliza, I will keep you safe." The familiar words stirred conflicting emotions. Resentment at being caught once more in his web of protection, but also a traitorous relief. With Adriano, danger was constant, but so was security. The contradiction had always been at the heart of our relationship. We traveled in silence after that, the boat cutting smoothly through the dark water. Occasionally, Adriano would adjust our course slightly, navigating by stars and some inner map rather than any visible landmarks. The shoreline was a distant, shadowy presence, dotted here and there with the lights of lakeside homes. Finally, we rounded a wooded peninsula, revealing a secluded cove. Nestled against the trees was a structure that seemed to grow organically from the landscape, all wood and glass, modern, yet somehow timeless. "The safe house," Adriano said unnecessarily, as he guided the boat toward a small private dock. It was beautiful, I had to admit. Like everything in Adriano's world, it exuded tasteful luxury without ostentation. As we drew closer, soft landscape lighting activated, illuminating our path while keeping the house itself mostly in shadow. He docked with practiced ease, securing the boat before helping me onto the wooden planks. "Stay close," he reminded me, though there was no need. I had no intention of straying from his side while potential threats lurked in the darkness. We approached the house via a winding path through carefully landscaped gardens. Adriano punched a code into another keypad at the entrance, then pressed his palm to a biometric scanner. The door unlocked with a soft click. "Welcome to La Rifugio," he said, ushering me inside. "My refuge." The interior was as impressive as the exterior. Open-concept living spaces with soaring ceilings, walls of glass overlooking the lake, minimalist furniture that managed to look both expensive and comfortable. But what struck me most was the personal touch evident everywhere. Books stacked on side tables, a half-finished chess game on a board near the fireplace, a worn leather jacket draped over a chair. This wasn't just another of Adriano's properties. This was somewhere he actually lived. "You come here often," I observed. He nodded, moving through the space with the ease of familiarity, checking security panels and adjusting settings. "When I need peace. When decisions weigh too heavily." He glanced at me. "When I missed you too much to bear Chicago without you." The simple admission caught me off guard. This new honesty of his was disarming, making it harder to maintain the emotional walls I'd built. "Are you hungry?" he asked, changing the subject as he moved toward what I presumed was the kitchen. I realized with surprise that I was. "Yes, actually, I'll make us something." He shrugged off his suit jacket, draping it over a stool, and rolling up the sleeves of his crisp white shirt. The kitchen is fully stocked. The domesticity of the moment was surreal after our dramatic escape. After 5 months of separation, Adriano Rossi, feared Mafia boss, was offering to cook for me in his lakeside hideaway, while unknown enemies possibly searched for us. "I should call the hospital," I said, remembering my responsibilities with a jolt. "They'll be expecting me tomorrow night." Adriano nodded, retrieving a phone from a drawer, not his personal device, but something clearly kept at the house for emergencies. "Untraceable," he explained, handing it to me. "Use this." I called Martinez directly, fabricating a family emergency that would keep me away for at least a week. She was concerned but understanding, promising to arrange coverage for my shifts. The lie tasted bitter, another deception in a life that had become built on them. When I hung up, Adriano was efficient in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with the same precision he applied to everything. I watched him work, this man who had once been the center of my world, who still moved with the confidence and authority that had first drawn me to him. "You cook now?" I asked, leaning against the counter. A small smile touched his lips. "I've always cooked. You just never saw it before. Because in Chicago, we'd had staff for everything, chefs and housekeepers and security. An entire infrastructure designed to cater to Adriano's needs, and by extension, mine. Here, he seemed more human, more accessible. "Tell me about your life," he said, the knife never pausing in its rhythmic motion. "These past 5 months, your work at the hospital. Why?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Why does it matter now?" He looked up, his dark eyes holding mine. "Because you matter to me, Eliza. All of you. Not just the parts that existed when you were with me." The sincerity in his voice made my chest ache. I found myself telling him about Mercy General, about the night shifts in the ER, about the few tentative friendships I'd formed despite my best efforts to remain isolated. He listened attentively, asking questions that showed genuine interest, never interrupting or judging. By the time we sat down to eat, a simple but delicious pasta dish that reminded me of our early days together, I felt more relaxed than I had any right to be, given the circumstances. "What happens now?" I asked, setting down my fork. "How long do we stay here?" Adriano considered the question, his expression thoughtful. "That depends on several factors. How quickly Marco can assess the threat. How much Dante's men know." He paused. "And what you decide about your future." "My future." The words felt hollow. "Do I really have choices anymore, Adriano? Or are they all just variations of living in your world, under your protection?" His jaw tightened, but he answered calmly. "You always have choices, Eliza. I meant what I said about helping you disappear completely if that's what you want. New identity, new location, enough money to build whatever life you choose. Without you. Without me," he confirmed, the words clearly difficult for him to say. "Why would you offer that?" I pressed, needing to understand. "After searching for me for 5 months, why would you let me go again?" Adriano set down his glass, his eyes never leaving mine. "Because I realized something when you left. Something I should have understood much sooner." He leaned forward, intensity radiating from him. "Love without freedom isn't love at all. It's just another form of control." The words hit me with unexpected force, echoing thoughts I'd had during our time apart. "And you're willing to give up that control?" "I'm trying to be," he admitted, vulnerability bleeding through his usual composure. "It goes against every instinct I have, Eliza. Every fiber of my being wants to keep you close, keep you safe, regardless of what you want." His hand clenched on the table, "But I'm learning that truly loving someone means sometimes letting them go." I stared at him, this complex, dangerous man who had both protected and imprisoned me, who had given me everything except the freedom to choose my own path. Was he truly capable of changing something so fundamental to his nature? "I need you to understand something," I said finally, my voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm me. "If I stay, and that's still a very big if, things would have to be completely different. I won't live in a cage again, no matter how gilded." He nodded, solemn. "I understand." "Do you?" "Because it would mean real freedom, Adriano. The ability to work, to have friends, to go places without a security detail shadowing my every move. Within reason? No, I cut him off. Not within reason, as defined by you. Actually free. Conflict played across his features, the need to protect warring with the desire to give me what I needed. Finally, he nodded again. I will try, Eliza. That's all I can promise. I will try to find that balance. It wasn't the absolute assurance I wanted, but it was honest. And perhaps honesty was the only real foundation we could build upon. Before I could respond, a security panel on the wall beeped softly. Adriano was immediately alert, moving to check the display. Motion sensors at the perimeter, he said, tension radiating from him. Could be animals, but the implied threat hung in the air between us. Our momentary peace shattered, reality intruding once more. Stay here, he instructed, retrieving his gun from where he'd set it aside. Away from the windows, as he moved with swift efficiency toward the security system, checking cameras and readouts, I was struck by the duality of this man. The thoughtful, vulnerable Adriano, who had cooked dinner and spoken of freedom, and the dangerous, calculating leader who now prepared to defend his territory. Both were real. Both were the man I had loved. And as I watched him activate additional security measures, I wondered if there was any future where those two sides could exist in balance. Or if loving Adriano Rossi meant forever living in the shadow of violence, regardless of how much freedom he claimed to offer. The minutes crawled by with excruciating slowness as Adriano monitored the security feeds, his body tense, expression focused. I remained where he'd instructed, though every instinct urged me to move, to flee from the invisible threat circling us. Anything? I finally asked, unable to bear the silence any longer. Adriano's eyes remained fixed on the displays. Movement in the eastern woods, 2 heat signatures. He adjusted something on the panel, they're being cautious, staying just at the edge of the sensor range. Dante's men? Most likely. His voice was calm, but I could see the calculation behind his eyes, the mental assessment of options and risks. Marco would have contacted me before approaching. As if summoned by his name, Adriano's phone vibrated. He answered with a terse, "Report." I couldn't hear Marco's side of the conversation, but Adriano's expression darkened as he listened. How many total? A pause. And our position? Another pause. Understood. Proceed as discussed. He ended the call, slipping the phone back into his pocket. 4 of Dante's men tracked us to this area. Marco eliminated one, but the others scattered. They're searching the shoreline. My heart hammered painfully against my ribs. What do we do? We have options. Adriano moved toward me, his movements controlled and deliberate. The house is secure. Reinforced walls, bulletproof glass. We could wait them out, but... A grim smile touched his lips. But I don't like being cornered, and Marco has confirmed they've called for reinforcements. The implication was clear. Our sanctuary might soon become a trap. There's a panic room, Adriano continued, gesturing toward what appeared to be a normal bookcase along one wall. If necessary, you can shelter there while I deal with this. While you deal with this, I repeated, anger flaring suddenly through my fear. You mean while you kill them? Or get yourself killed trying? His expression softened slightly. Eliza. No. I stood straighter, finding resolve I didn't know I still possessed. I'm not hiding in some panic room while you risk your life. Not again. Confusion crossed his features. Again? The word had slipped out unintentionally, bringing with it memories I'd tried to suppress. Of another night, another safe house, another threat, the night I'd lost our child. Nothing, I said quickly. What other options do we have besides staying here? Adriano studied me for a moment, clearly aware I was hiding something, but he didn't press. There's a helipad on the roof. My pilot is on standby about 15 minutes away. Can we reach him without being seen? Possibly. He glanced at the security feeds again. The thermal imaging shows them still searching the perimeter. If we move now, while they're scattered. The decision crystallized in my mind with surprising clarity. Then let's go. I'm not spending another night running or hiding. Adriano's eyes widened slightly at my determination. Then he nodded. Take this, he said, removing a smaller handgun from an ankle holster and offering it to me. I hesitated. I'd never held a gun before, had always feared and avoided them. "You don't have to use it," he said gently, "but I'd feel better knowing you have it. Just in case we get separated." I took the weapon gingerly, its weight unfamiliar and frightening in my palm. "I wouldn't even know how. Safety's here." He showed me quickly. "Point and pull the trigger. That's all you need to know right now." He moved to a closet, retrieving a black jacket which he draped around my shoulders. "It's cold on the roof, and dark clothing will help us stay hidden." The practical concern touched me unexpectedly. Even now, with danger closing in, he thought of my comfort. "Ready?" he asked, checking his own weapon one last time. I wasn't ready. Not for this night, not for the choices that lay ahead, not for the truths still unspoken between us. But I nodded anyway. Adriano led me up a spiral staircase to the second level, then through what appeared to be a master bedroom. A skylight in the ceiling slid open at his command, revealing a retractable ladder. "I'll go first," he said, holstering his gun to climb. "Stay close behind me." The roof was flat and dark, surrounded by a low parapet. The helipad was marked with dim lights that activated as we approached, barely visible unless you were looking directly at them. Adriano immediately moved to a control panel, pressing a sequence of buttons before speaking quietly into a comm device. "Hector, we need extraction. Now." I heard the tinny response through the speaker. "On my way, boss. ETA 12 minutes. 12 minutes. An eternity when every second exposed us further to the danger below. I moved to the edge of the roof, peering cautiously over the parapet. The property was shrouded in darkness, the landscaping lights extinguished when the security system detected the intruders. The lake stretched out before us, a vast expanse of blackness broken only by distant pinpricks of light from homes on the far shore. "See anything?" Adriano asked, coming to stand beside me. I shook my head. "It's too dark." "Good. That works in our favor." His hand found mine in the darkness, warm and steadying. "Hector will approach from the lakeside. Minimal lights. We'll be away before they even realize we've left." The confidence in his voice was reassuring, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were still missing something, that the trap was closing around us in ways we couldn't yet see. "Adriano," I said quietly, "if something happens—" "Nothing will happen," he interrupted, his grip on my hand tightening. "We'll be in Chicago by morning, but if it does," I persisted, needing to say this while I had the chance, "I need you to know that I didn't leave because I stopped loving you." The admission hung between us, delicate and dangerous. I couldn't see his expression clearly in the darkness, but I felt the tension in his body, the slight intake of breath. "Then why?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Why run from me, Eliza? Why not talk to me? Tell me what was wrong." The moment for complete honesty had arrived, unavoidable now. "Because I was pregnant," I said, the words falling like stones into still water. "And I was afraid." Adriano went utterly still beside me. "Pregnant," he repeated, the single word laden with shock, confusion, and something else, a terrible dawning understanding. "When— 5 months ago, when I left." I swallowed hard, forcing myself to continue. "I found out that morning. And then that night, I overheard you and Marco talking about Tomas, about eliminating him because he was a threat. And I thought—" "You thought I would harm my own child?" The hurt in his voice was palpable. "No, not intentionally. But your world, Adriano, I couldn't bring a child into that, into danger and violence and constant fear." He was silent for so long that I wondered if he would respond at all. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "The baby, where is it now?" The question I'd dreaded, the truth I'd carried alone for 5 months. "There is no baby," I whispered, tears burning behind my eyes. "I lost it, 3 weeks after I left." "How?" The word was barely audible. I closed my eyes, the memories washing over me in a painful wave. I was staying in a motel, trying to figure out my next move. Men broke in. I thought they were your men at first, looking for me. But they weren't. My voice faltered. They were Dante's men. They didn't know about the pregnancy, but they were rough. By the time I got to a hospital, Adriano's arm came around me, pulling me against him with careful gentleness, as if I might shatter. "Why didn't you call me?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. "After the hospital, why didn't you reach out?" "I was ashamed," I admitted, "and still afraid. I thought if you knew about the baby, knew I'd lost it, you'd either blame me or pity me. I couldn't bear either." His other hand came up to cradle my face, thumb brushing away tears I hadn't realized were falling. "It wasn't your fault, Eliza. None of it. Not Tomas, not the baby, not Dante's men finding you. I should have protected you better. I should have been more open, made you feel safe enough to come to me with your fears." The absolution I hadn't known I needed washed over me, easing a burden I'd carried alone for too long. I leaned into him, allowing myself this moment of vulnerability, of connection. The distant sound of helicopter blades broke the silence, growing steadily closer, our extraction approaching. "We need to be ready," Adriano said, though he made no move to release me. "I know." But still we stood there, locked in an embrace that felt like both an ending and a beginning. The truth finally laid bare between us. A sudden flash of light from below shattered the moment, a powerful beam sweeping across the property, illuminating the house. "They've brought reinforcements," Adriano said grimly, finally pulling away, faster than expected. The helicopter was now visible, a dark shape against the night sky, approaching rapidly from the direction of the lake, but the searchlight from below had seen it too. The beam now tracking its approach. "They'll try to prevent the landing," Adriano said, drawing his weapon. "We need to provide cover." Before I could respond, the sharp crack of gunfire erupted from below. Adriano pushed me down behind the parapet, shielding me with his body as bullets pinged against the roof's edge. "Hector!" he shouted into his comm device. "Abort landing! Too hot! Circle and wait for my signal." The helicopter veered away, disappearing into the night sky. Our escape route gone. "What now?" I asked, the gun clutched uselessly in my hand. Adriano's expression was grim but determined. "Now we fight." The next minutes passed in a blur of chaos and fear. Adriano returned fire strategically, forcing Dante's men to take cover, buying us precious time. I remained crouched behind the parapet, heart pounding so loudly I was sure they could hear it below. "Marco's coming," Adriano said suddenly, pressing a hand to his earpiece. 3 minutes out with reinforcements." Hope flared briefly, only to be extinguished as the gunfire intensified, multiple weapons now firing from different positions around the house. "They're trying to pin us down until their main force arrives," Adriano explained, his voice eerily calm as he reloaded. "We need to move." "Where? We're trapped up here." "Not quite." He pointed to a section of the roof I hadn't noticed before. "Emergency repelling equipment. We can descend on the lakeside, reach the boat." The idea of dangling from the roof on a rope while bullets flew around us seemed insane, but no more insane than remaining where we were, waiting for Dante's men to overwhelm us. "Okay," I agreed, my voice steadier than I felt. "Show me what to do." Adriano quickly explained the rappelling harness, helping me into it with efficient movements. His hands were warm and sure against me, grounding me in the midst of chaos. "I'll go first," he said, securing his own harness. "Once I'm down, follow exactly as I showed you. I'll be right below to help." I nodded, terror and determination warring within me. As he prepared to swing over the edge, I grabbed his arm. "Adriano." He paused, looking back at me with a question in his eyes. "I still love you," I said simply. "Whatever happens, I needed you to know that." Something powerful and unnameable flashed across his features. He pulled me to him in one swift movement, his mouth finding mine in a kiss that contained every word we hadn't said, every emotion we'd suppressed. When he pulled away, his eyes held mine with fierce intensity. "We're going to survive this, Eliza. And then we're going to build something new, something better. Together." For the first time in 5 months, I believed in a future beyond mere survival. A future that might include both love and freedom, danger and joy. A future with Adriano, not as his possession, but as his partner. As he swung over the edge of the roof, disappearing into the darkness, I knew with sudden clarity that some choices were worth any risk, and Adriano Rossi, with all his complexity and contradiction, was mine.